Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me. Excellent. So thank you very much for the warm welcome. I'm here to talk about how to make business mobility a reality, talk about some of the trends, the barriers, and some of the key insights around a market study that we'd recently performed with over 1,000 companies with 100 plus employees around the globe. So a little bit to myself, obviously been given a little bit of an introduction, but I've been in business mobility or enterprise mobility management with AirWatch, joined in June 2012, so coming up to 4 years in this industry with a security background beforehand. So I'm currently now responsible for the end user computing and business mobility for Germany at VMware. And essentially, we're looking there really around some of the big trends where we're seeing the desktop merging with the mobile world, and that will be reflected in some of the research and the customer use case stories that I'll be presenting today. So in terms of the report, so as I said, there are more than 1,200 companies were surveyed around the globe, from C-level, the lines of business as well, which are obviously key stakeholders in this process, and the IT departments in these organizations. And really it's a bunch of VMware customers as a market sample. And this work was basically done middle of last year, July 2015. As you can see, through multiple locations around the world. So really, when we're talking about the industry evolution, I think we've taken quite a journey in terms of business mobility over the last few years. Really, at the beginning, organizations were taking a look at individual productivity. And I guess the focus really around that point of time was enabling email, mobile email, onto these devices. Obviously started off with BlackBerry devices and moved on to smart devices with the iPhone being released in 2007. But essentially it was about being able to respond to emails and provide that individual productivity. As we started going through the curve and organizations were looking at what else they're able to do in terms of the maturity of the market and the business impact and value brought to the business, organizations were then starting to look at team productivity, around collaboration, about content management and applications down onto the device. And this cycle is moving further through into business mobility, really where organizations are looking to re-engineer their processes and really perform business transformation, taking a look at what these new technologies enable them to change in their business processes and their route to market and gain real business value and a return on that investment, and maintain a competitive edge in their market spaces ever more in the face of globalization to keep or gain an advantage in that space. So really, as we've gone through and see what is the maturity in terms of where these organizations are on that maturity stage versus the value it brings back to the business, really we're seeing that 85% of the organizations are still focused and at a maturity stage where they're focusing really on the individual productivity. Again, around email, maybe some content about accessing file repositories around the cloud, but rudimentary to a lot of the things that this technology enables organizations and individuals to go and do. And really, as we move through the cycle of the maturity, as the end goal of achieving true business mobility, we're only seeing about 17% of the organizations that we basically polled in our market research of having reached what they saw as their strategic goal around business mobility. And there we go. So really, when we take a look at some of the goals, why are organizations looking to make this journey? And really, what are the strategic outcomes and the operational gains that they're looking for? I guess one of the key things to take away around this is really that the outcomes from operational gains and increased effectiveness really do outweigh the cost savings. So organizations that may be just looking purely at a standpoint, reduce the cost of the IT infrastructure and the services they provide, are not looking holistically at the whole picture. In terms of the successfully implemented strategy, the operational gains and that effectiveness it brings to the organization really outweigh any the hard cost savings in terms of being more efficient in the services that you provide. So really, when we take a look at that, we've seen 45% increase in workforce effectiveness, and a 34% increase in streamlining the business processes, which really brings an outcome also of 31% reduction in the cost of supporting those mobile workers in terms of their effective strategies around there. But really, when organizations take a look at that journey, quite a lot, and I guess it's human nature, they really take a look at what are the top challenges that maybe block them in terms of executing on their business mobility strategy. And in terms of the responses that we received, and I guess it'll be no surprise to anyone here in the audience, that really security and control of devices are the main focus and barrier for organizations in terms of their belief of how, what obstacles are in the way for them to execute on their business mobility strategy. 32% cite risk of data loss in terms of what data is in the applications and access to file shares and repositories and the like. So that's obviously maintaining a serious concern for these organizations. Obviously, that ties in with overall security, endpoint security as well. But 29% also have an issue around cost and the complexity of management in terms of what does it cost them to provide that service, but also the complexity and the skill sets that they might have in their organizations to successfully execute against that. So that really is taking a look at the internal resources and the skill sets that you have in your workforce, and are they the right ones to assist in the strategy and the transformation that these organizations are looking to achieve. On the flip side, when these organizations take a look at some of the factors that are driving their strategies, and they're taking a look at what are they doing to achieve their goals around business mobility. And on the less mature side, lots of organizations are introducing new mobile customer-facing applications in terms of providing insight to their customer, a better customer experience potentially as well, specifically in the business-to-consumer market space, but also in the B2B side, how they can achieve efficiencies around there. 67% are looking to upgrade their infrastructures to support mobile business model. So a lot of organizations are looking at, are there infrastructures that what they currently have in place, would they enable a execution of a business mobile strategy and a mobile business model in that sense? And furthermore, then 64% are building or re-engineering core business process for mobile. And I guess that's a real key interesting point that organizations are taking a look at, because really it is a transformation. It is taking a look at your existing processes that might be mission critical to the success of your organization, and taking a look at, rather than just putting a mobile application to support that process, is actually asking the question, is that process still valid for your organization? Should we be continuing the status quo and the way of working, or should we look to re-engineer our processes that, due to the advantages that a mobile strategy and this technology enable? And that is the key point, is not just taking a look at the status quo and say we've always done that and basically transport those processes into the mobile world, but actually revisit the processes and ask the question of why are we doing things this way, and what smarter ways could these processes be done to become more effective and gain a advantage in the marketplace. So there's obviously a number of market trends that we see that benefit business mobility overall. One is the end-to-end security around business mobility. So it's obviously taking a look at security from the device, data at rest, data in motion, authentication, identity management into the back-end systems. Look at the mobile cloud era, where we're not just talking about one cloud, but multiple clouds and access from mobile devices around that. So the enablement of the security in these environments and the industry is moving forward in that space, that is driving and supporting business mobility. The other side, and I touched on that earlier, is unified endpoint management. And really, it's where we're seeing the desktop and the mobile world coming together, where organizations are taking a look at trends such as the deployment of Windows 10 into the marketplace and saying, is the historic way that we've managed our desktop estate, is that actually still valid? Do we need to manage it in that constricted way? Or should we take a look at the mobile world and how mobile devices are managed and learn lessons from that side to maybe go for a more lightweight management and gain operational efficiency through the automation and the processes and the advantages the mobile world brings also to the endpoint side and then the laptop and PC side. And the other side is really the modern identity for the mobile cloud. It's being able to integrate from a user experience to act as an enabler, looking at things like single sign-on across multiple applications on mobile devices, and enabling through that authentication access to cloud services and repositories, and really making it from an end user perspective the focus to bring that as an enabler. It's really sort of consumer simple in terms of the user experience, but enterprise secure around that. So those are the trends that we're looking in the industry at the moment. Coming back to some of the key insights that we've been taking a look at in terms of the 1,000+ organizations that we spoke to, just to give you a little bit of a sample, really to show you a bit of the global nature of the organizations that we spoke to. So plenty in North America, Europe, China, Japan, and Asia Pacific, obviously Australia and New Zealand, really gives a holistic view around the world to take a look at these trends. In terms of some of the key insights that we received back, really, a few leaders have really achieved business mobility. Some have sort of few have stepped out in front of them in business mobility, but overwhelmingly with the feedback we get that there's intent to get there, that organizations are right now in the journey with a strategic mission to achieve business mobility. But having said that, we only see today that 17% of global companies have shifted a core business process to a mobile model as of yet. As an industry, that means we have some work to do to support this and our customers and these organizations. Therefore, also an additional 2/3, which is 61%, to be exact, are actively re-engineering or have plans to re-engineer a core business process for mobile to take a look at. So we really see that organizations are looking at their processes and not just the technology, that the two are interlinked and combined to drive that advantage for themselves. If we take a look at the second insight, we see a common model emerging when businesses chart their journey towards business mobility. So really, we sort of segment that into 3 stages in terms of the key business mobility initiatives. We're talking about early, middle, and mature stages. And I guess early stages we talked about, really it's enabling work away from the desktop. Perhaps a BYOD device, give the employees choice on what device they're most productive with, but also just deploying security to these devices in terms of what applications are on there, certificate-based authentication, integration with your infrastructure. And we're seeing 40% of the organizations that we spoke to are at this stage. When we're talking about the middle maturity stage, we're speaking to organizations who are upgrading their infrastructure to support mobile. And they're also introducing new mobile customer-facing apps on mobile devices. And we're also seeing that they're looking at content as well. So it's applications and content have become more and more in focus away from just personal email content. And they're looking to leverage cloud-based content systems for file sharing, whether it's an Office 365, OneDrive, Google at work, these sort of cloud services. But we're also shifting traditional desktops to a new architecture, and organizations are looking also to enable their organizations with social media, chat and video tools to further enhance the collaboration tools that are available. And really, we're seeing also a driver behind that, where organizations are seeing if we don't supply that sort of technology to our employees, we see a shadow IT emerge where they'll circumvent core IT services from the business and utilize consumer-facing services to gain these productivity gains. So they're really transporting ways of working and file sharing and collaborating from their personal lives and looking to have that consumer ease also in the business world. As we're seeing organizations who are further along then in the mature cycle, where we only see about 22% of organizations that we polled, we're really looking at those that they're actually defining user profiles beyond devices. And they're rebuilding these critical applications of their business for mobile employee access, and also re-engineering core business processes to bring a mobile focus to these processes, and really enable the employees to access these apps from any device, to provide a true flexibility, so it makes it regardless, what application they're looking to access with what device and what location they are in, whether inside or outside of the network. So that really goes forward to more mature organizations where we see 22% of those polled. When we take a look at the critical barriers to success for business mobility in terms of executing a strategy, security, again, is the top barrier. 52% of customers are not executing right now due to security concerns. 51%, though, are not executing business mobility due to budget around that. So I think organizations really need to take a look at the advantages that they bring and take a look at the soft side of the return on investment, the productivity side, what that brings in terms of efficiencies for the organization, and not just an ROI in terms of the cost of a service and deploying that, but taking a look at the wider impact to their business. And 29% of customers lack the skills needed to support business mobility. So we're seeing that organizations might want to, but their workforce lack the ability to execute or provide a vision that meets the demands of their business. So what are the top reasons that are driving business mobility in organizations? Well, key is obviously productivity and streamlining processes. 43% cite their top goal for business mobility as workforce productivity, and 34% want to streamline their business processes. Having said that, 31% state that their goals are a reduction in cost of supporting a mobile workforce. So we see a few things biting each other. They want to be able to do it better, easier, make it more efficient and less intensive from a management perspective to provide that service and support business mobility. But on the other side, they want to provide that and have a cost reduction and gain a cost saving through utilizing these services. In terms of the feedback, though, from those customers who are executing against a business mobility strategy, and this is particularly interesting, and I think harder to measure at the beginning, but these organizations are seeing returns on investments and ROI against their business mobility investments of over 150%. And those companies who have implemented a business mobility strategy are seeing at least a 2-time return on those investments compared to those who are not. So I think that brings quite a compelling reason for organizations to execute and define their business mobility strategy, and they execute against that because their competitors are doing so already. So what do you need to do to be successful around that? But I think one of the key points really is to invest in user education before implementing software. I think that's a key point to understand how to enable your users to utilize the technology. And that will bring a greater benefit than just providing the technology. It needs to be in combination. Organizations also need to understand that gains in user effectiveness will outweigh the cost savings. So in terms of business mobility strategy, the end goal should always be the user effectiveness and return on investment that brings rather than a reduction in cost of providing that service. But also you need to take into account the time to deploy. It always takes longer than expected to deploy these technologies. And organizations need to implement process changes and think about that before deploying the software. And they also need to establish, therefore, a business mobility center of excellence, an organization within the business that actually focuses and builds an expertise in business mobility. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about our view around that and what we found from market research. So what I'd like to do is provide you some insight from one of our customer success stories with Lufthansa Cargo. It's always nice for me to speak about it, but I think it's a little bit better to hear from the customer around that. So we've got a little video to play you. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes, and hopefully you will find that interesting in terms of the content and the value that it's brought to Lufthansa Cargo.
Wir als Lufthansa Cargo sind ein internationales Luftfrachtunternehmen. Strategie der Lufthansa Cargo ist es, paperless zu operieren. Das funktioniert nur mit einer guten, starken, mobilen Unterstützung.
Der Umstieg von einem Desktop-basierten Gerät auf ein mobiles Gerät im Bereich des EFBs hatte 2 große Vorteile. Der eine Vorteil war die Gewichtseinsparung. Durch den Einsatz von mobilen Geräten waren wir in der Lage, umfangreiche Einbauten aus dem Cockpit zu entfernen und damit einen 5-stelligen Betrag an Fuel Efficiency im Jahr zu generieren. Der zweite Aspekt war, dass wir mit einem mobilen Gerät in der Lage sind, die Leute oder die Mitarbeiter schneller und effektiver mit Informationen auszustatten und auch mit neuen Applikationen, mit neuen Herangehensweisen. Damit sparen wir natürlich auch Kosten. Denn jede Minute, die ein Pilot eingesetzt wird, kostet Geld.
Die Entwicklung der Luftfahrttechnik ist oftmals durch langwierige Zulassungsprozesse bestimmt, durch die Verwendung von Standardcomputern, Tablets, sind wir oftmals in der Lage, diese Zyklen etwas zu verringern und somit schneller Trends aufnehmen zu können. Während früher eine große eigenentwickelte Suite betrieben werden musste mit recht hohem Aufwand, können wir jetzt auf Standardprodukte zurückgreifen. Durch Verträge mit den jeweiligen Herstellern der Standardprodukte hat sich der eigene Betriebsaufwand signifikant reduziert.
Wir benutzen das Konformitätsrichtlinienkonzept von AirWatch, was sehr wichtig ist, weil wir durch das Sicherheitskonzept des Betriebssystems nicht auf alles eine Sicht haben des Geräts. Das heißt, wir wissen nicht immer, welche Applikation wann genutzt wird. Das wollen wir auch gar nicht wissen. Wir müssen aber sicherstellen, dass, wie gesagt, wieder der Flugbetrieb funktioniert und keine Applikation dazu führt, dass das EFB zu einem bestimmten Zeitpunkt ausfällt. Also durch die besondere Betriebssystemarchitektur sind wir in der Lage, auch Fehler abzufangen. Das heißt, die Applikationen beeinflussen sich kaum gegenseitig. Wenn eine Applikation nicht mehr funktioniert, kann ich trotzdem den Rest benutzen. Und mit diesem Fallback kann ich ein EFB auch mit Applikationen bestücken, die ich nicht vollumfänglich kontrolliere, sondern die halt von einem Drittanbieter kommen.
Kleiner or big, apologies. We'll get it sorted. Please bear with us. No? Okay, apologies. So unfortunately we can't complete that, but if you are interested in seeing the rest of that video, then it is available from our website as well to go through that. But I think what I can do is just, provide a quick summary around some of the advantages that really have come together for that, and hopefully it's given you some insight in some of the key personnel within Lufthansa that were involved in the decision to deploy AirWatch, and also what their strategy was in terms of their business mobility strategy and how they executed against that. So really to give you a bit of background to Lufthansa Cargo, so they've got more than 450 crew members, and they service 45 destinations worldwide with a fleet of 19 freight planes. So just to recap what the business challenge was, previously flight information, which was critical for the operational use of the aircraft, was either paper-based or pilots used an in-house desktop-based electronic flight bag system. Now, this electronic flight bag system was required extensive built-in components into the cockpit, and launching it before each flight was really a lengthy process that was associated with additional costs in terms of that time. but also really the tools that they had were non-standard. So they were developed in-house, a lot of the tools and the applications that they utilized. And that led to further sort of long and complicated certification processes as with the various airline or flight authorities around the world, with the aviation authorities. But also, obviously, in terms of supporting this sort of technology that is not based on standardized software, is exponentially higher than utilizing standardized software. So also they had an effect from that it sort of reduced their opportunities to innovate within the cockpit and their business processes through that. So what the change really was is that they went from this desktop-based system to a tablet-based system to gain quicker and more effective access to information and have greater flexibility. That was the change they're looking to achieve. And really, they were able to eliminate the equipment that they utilized, which weighed about 40 kilograms, had a 5-figure sum just on fuel efficiency savings. And it's harder to quantify the operational savings they had just from booting up the laptop, the boot times, and delivering that information, and also the, so to speak, the route to market, the time to market of any innovation that they brought into the cockpit to optimize and make that more efficient, that process. So they utilize AirWatch with our compliance engine to ensure that any application that is required from a compliance perspective for effective flight operations is installed. But they also enable their pilots to utilize users personally as well for their personal requirements, but the two areas are able to keep separate. So the operational data and maybe the Facebook application, the two were able to reside on the same device and be utilized personally, but didn't actually affect the business critical applications that they were supporting. And the key thing really is the going with contracts with standardized product manufacturers, and they've reduced their own operating costs significantly and reduce approval cycles from aviation authorities. Key thing is they enable them to adopt trends quicker into the cockpit. So what's next for Lufthansa? So the next aim is to digitally archive its flight data to inform future flight operations. Essentially building that out, that database of data, and being able to utilize that in the future and make that accessible and gain operational efficiencies through that. So really there I come to the end of the presentation. Afterwards I'm happy to take any questions, or I could stand up here if anyone wants to speak up from the audience. But if you would like to speak to me a bit further, then come please visit me in Hall 3, stand GO2, about 5-minute walk down that side. I'd be happy to speak to you at our stand. Many thanks for your time and your attention, and wish you success for visit here at CeBIT. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dominic Schmidt-Rieche. Yet we do have another 90 seconds or something, so that'd be one question. Here we go.
Thank you. Just a very quick question. You talked about integration in the cloud and the challenge that companies have if they're using multiple cloud systems to have a single sign-on and that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what's going to happen with that in the future? Are we going to end up with a situation where the traditional domain is a thing of the past and you're completely cloud-based and security and everything is all included in that infrastructure?
Yeah, I think we need to sort of roll back, and I think it's very interesting to take a look at that aspect, but I think it's not going to be for organizations digitally one model or another, all right? And really we're talking about the mobile cloud era. So we'll see resources in their own data center for various reasons, whether they're compliance reasons for local authority regulations, whether it's reasons around operational efficiency. So we'll see that across there. So I don't think we'll see company domains exiting completely around that, and there remains a single point of an identity around that. But I think a very interesting point around that is that organizations with mobile cloud services, when they're looking to adopt those, is that they need to take a holistic view around that brings in identity and device security at the same time. And some of the key things around these cloud services is obviously they're able to be accessed from any PC, anytime, anywhere. The issue from a security perspective is how do you secure the data once someone has logged on to that? And I think that's where identity management services as a layer go across, that work in combination with device compliance, so that you're able to make sure that the user authenticates themselves, but make it user-friendly, not onerous for the user, because that hinders adoption. But on the flip side, ensure that you also secure and have compliant and managed devices only that are used to access these services to complete the circle in and around that in the bubble. Simply, if you're using a cloud service, one second. Obviously, you could, if the end user knows their username and their logon, they can access from any side. So if you obfuscate that with a identity and access management solution around that, you can basically have the end user not know that password and do the authentication through a single sign-on process, and that enables you to secure it down onto which devices are using it to access.
Thank you very much, Dominic Schmidt-Rieche.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to join him at his stand in Hall 3.